Yalali yalali yalalom, yalali yalalom, yalali yalalom, tom, yalali yalali yalalom, yalali yalalom, yalali yalalom, tom.
Namaskar everyone. I welcome you to our interview series in Pursuit of Excellence presented by Sahapedia and Sangeet Vidyaniketan. Today we have amongst us the renowned Kathak exponent Srimati Aditi Mangaldas, who is known for her contribution towards transforming Kathak from within and giving it an all modern sensibility. Namaskar Aditi Didi, how are you?
Thank you very much for having me here, Madhur.
The pleasure is all ours, Didi. So, Didi, as we were talking about, you have been renowned to bring about a change in the character of Kathak and how it is perceived. And in certain ways, you're also continuing your guru's legacy, both Kumudini Lakhia and Birju Maharaj's, while keeping to the traditional roots and also expanding the boundaries. So, could you just take us through the journey and how you began with Kumi Ben and how you came to Maharajji?
I think, well, I started with Kumiben at a very young age. You know, I don't belong to a family of dancers. It's a family of industrialists and academicians. But we lived with my paternal grandfather, and now this is what my parents tell me. I don't know. That as a very young child, I used to jump on top of a table because in the evening, the entire family, and it was a huge Guju family, would all congregate to meet my grandmother. And I would somehow try to communicate, not using words, but using movements. And they thought, finally, maybe there's some artistic spark in this family. So they exposed me to as much within their possibilities to painting, sculpture, music, dance. In fact, even they sent me to a community science center because I loved, later on I realized I loved mathematics, but that whole thing about questioning was always there as a child and why, and so that's how I started with Kumi Men. It was absolute magic to be with her. And as life evolved and I finished my teens, I felt there was something in me that was not dancing. Some kind of questioning within myself. So with Kumiben's blessings, I went to Delhi to be with Maharajji. And of course, again, there was complete immersion in what we were doing. There was a kind of, dance seemed to envelop you from within and without, and it was these beautiful, extremely intense times. And then suddenly, in my late 20s, I suddenly started feeling again, there's something in me that's not dancing. What is it? I don't know. It was, and I think this quest is something that both my gurus, my family have encouraged me to have an opinion, to question, to be able to debate or disagree or have a meaningful conversation, not take everything for granted. And so I decided that I would try and be on my own. Now, with these two great legends, um, things were intense, but things were easy because any little problem you had, and they solved it. It was something that I wanted to find solutions from my own life experiences, which included both my gurus, of course. So I was dancing with them. I was really lucky to be included in their inner circle. So I was performing in Maharajji's company. In Maharajji's troupe when we performed also all over the world with Kumimen's company, of course. So this was suddenly, I was on my own. From performances at the Lincoln Center, performances in amazing venues across the world. Besides performances, also the whole ambience of protectiveness, that you get with your guru. It's all gone. And I said, I want to bare myself. I want to bare myself to my dance. And I want to have the courage to take the first step. It was really, when much later, when my son was born, I realized when he was growing up of how tentative their mind is, so active, and yet tentatively they start learning. Suddenly one day they're crawling and then they're walking. And I felt like that, lost in this forest of this immense, amazing world of dance. And I think that was a great learning in itself.
So, Didi, I want to ask you, Kumudini Lakhia ji is renowned to bring about a huge change from, portraying just the mythological characters and, taking Kathak out from its rustic roots to, using even electronic music. So, how much of an influence was Kumi Ben in your journey when you decided to be on your own, and also how much of an influence was Maharaj, because he was strongly rooted in tradition. So what was this? Was there a dilemma? Was there a balance? If you can just.
I have always tried to look at both my gurus um, and their interaction, because they know each other really well, and they have both worked together very well. And yet there is one phrase that really defines in a way their philosophy, if I may take the liberty of talking about them. Kumiben, I have often heard her saying, Kathak without Krishna. And Maharajji saying, Kathak is Krishna. So my way of absorbing, of being part of these two great legends, was to go to the base of the teaching. And to try, and I found that with Kumiben, it was like like horizontal expansion. You know, this tiny body reaches out across music, across literature, across space, across time. It's a fantastic horizontal. And though we learned only Kathak, she said, don't wear blinkers. Be open to the world. With Maharajji, it was this other form of magic. It was an internal grinding, an exfoliating, if I may say, of every molecule within you. So it was a deeper going vertical within the dance itself, the center of my body to the rest of my body. And Maharajji also constantly is open to life. I mean, if you sit with him and suddenly there is a door that shuts and he's making a tihai. He sees a bird fly away and the flapping of the wing, he has formed an entire composition. So what is that? That is about being alive to the now.
Yes. Yeah.
And Maharajji has said so many times that when he was working with Kumiben, they took the bowls of Kathak and they tried to find a beauty in them. Not that every bowl needed a movement. How is it possible to find spaces within these bowls? It's different. A bowl, when played on the tabla, is different when it's danced with the body. I'm not only dancing it with my body, I'm dancing it with my mind, with my intellect, I'm dancing it with my emotion. So you need to find those spaces within the bowls. And that is how I have always approached their teaching. And eventually, I think I'm thankful to them, thankful to my family, that I said I must have the courage to dance my own dance. I have to be honest with myself. And I've never wanted to be a great copy. I'd rather be a bad original. So we make mistakes, you know. That's about a whole, I want to be vulnerable. I want to have, I think I have learned more by having doubts, by having questions. Sometimes when I'm teaching my students, I come home and I say, oh my God, you know, I think I have learned more than them today. Because suddenly a movement took on, because I was trying to explain it, because I was trying to see through the obvious. Many more things get revealed. So, yeah.
And Didi, since you said, you wanted to be vulnerable, and it takes immense amount of courage, coming from great legacy and great tradition of, of carrying forward your guru's legacy. It takes immense amount of courage to be on your own and discover your own story. So, how from what you had learned from with your gurus, how did you tread on to this line of not really leaving behind their legacy and exploring your own, but giving a new perspective and a new dimension? So essentially, what I'm asking is, what is your definition? And this is very important. What is your definition of classical? And when you say you also do Kathak-based contemporary, what does that mean? So these are two very important things we must talk about.
Okay. To me, and I think to many artists all over the world, classical is something like a flowing river. It is something that has come down to us, informed by geography and history. It has traversed centuries. It has traversed different lands, but it has always flowed. Is it right English? I don't know. So what I mean is that though it has come down from a historic point of view, a geographic point of view, one must never forget that it has always been flowing. And I question that what is greater? Is the legacy of a human being greater, or is legacy of a particular dance form greater? In my mind, there is no conflict in answering that question. The legacy of the human existence is far greater than any form of dance. And therefore, I always have believed that the form has been made by the people who have been immersed in it, the people who have been part of it. It's not the other way around. Kathak has gone through this incredibly interesting history. It has gone through great transformations. But one thing is that it has constantly flowed. And I think that is one thing I keep on saying, that protectionism is a nail on the coffin of creativity. It is because these great performers down the centuries from different geographic regions with their own life understanding, with their own sense of poetry and rhythm and own structure of their bodies, they gave in something to Kathak. Now, I feel the flow is such that sometimes things are added on, maybe, that don't have meaning, and they will sink to the ground. And sometimes things become part of a tradition. You won't see, I heard in one interview Maharaj being asked that, do you dance today what you danced 50 years ago? And he said, of course not. For an artist, it is really important to be alive to the now. Did I answer your question? Yeah. So at some point, actually it started off in 1986. Kumiben has been doing very interesting, just amazing work. In any case, that is what I was already part of a process. And with Maharaj also, there were very interesting dimensions that he thought of. There was one piece, I don't remember, where he changed the gungrus. Sare gapa dhasa. Each gungru, each dancer used another sound pattern. There was something, he used a whole section of games. I think it was called Nrityakeli. Kumiben expanded the miniature painting into a backdrop. And look at the imagery of this. This was 1971, in which we were inanimate objects, a three-dimensional miniature painting. And then the flute starts. And it is this flute that fills us with life, and we dance. So they didn't have to use the name Krishna. It didn't have to. It was just a three-dimensional miniature painting that was some way a tribute to some quality of life, So when it was at 1986, when Ashok Vajpayee ji asked us, some of us dancers, to go to Bharat Bhavan and perform 3 poems, Kathak or Kavita it was. And one poem had to be one poetry from classical Indian literature, one from whatever the traditional Kathak poetry, and one contemporary poetry. Now, classical Indian poetry, I used Mirabai. With Kathak poetry, I use Maharaj. Contemporary poetry, and though you see, you have to see the background was already there. However much classical, I think Maharaj is really the most amazing legend who lives in the now. You know, and Kumiman has always been open to every influence. I mean, like at 90, she's saying, I'm ready to learn more. So it's just so inspiring. So at that point, I found a poem by Agay. And when I read that poem, there was a sense of claustrophobia. Maybe I was passing through claustrophobia at that point in my life. And therefore, when I was reading through it, more and more the sense of claustrophobia. Now I tried to compose it with every possible tool that I had, okay, within the broader parameters of Kathak that I knew at that point. And somehow I couldn't, because classically in Kathak, the underlying rasa is Shringar.
Yeah, for all classical dances, actually. Yeah.
So this gut-wrenching sorrow, how would you show? This anger that burns you to smithereens, not an anger, you're angry because your beloved is with somebody else. How do you show claustrophobia, which is totally non-Shringaric? It's completely dry.
Yeah, an abstract.
And it's, I don't have the mudra vocabulary in mudras to say it. I don't have the vocabulary in my system that I have learned to I don't have it. You may have it, but I at that point didn't have it. And therefore, that was my first step in planting a seed and watering it with sensibilities that were not within the broader parameters. And that is where the journey started. Now, I didn't even think of all this at that point, by the way. I just explored and something happened. But that was the beginning point of asking myself that what if I want to communicate? I'm a storyteller. I'm a kathakar. Katha kahe so katha. I'm a kathakar. My story is different from your story. My story is certainly different from the story of someone who lived a century ago or 50 years ago or even 500 years ago, you know. And their story may be different, and yet certain emotions are still the same. So what happens if I want to narrate something and I do not find the possibility within the broadest parameters of Kathak? So do I stop myself? That's of course, sorry, you went off. Something happened on my computer. And
yeah, the recording is still on. I can see you and hear you.
Yeah, so okay, I think they just be me going and doing something on that. Anyway, so the thing is, what do I say to myself? Do I say, no, I cannot touch this emotion because I'm not able to the best of my ability, say it within the parameters, broader parameters. And I keep on saying this because each practitioner, each artist of Kathak has stretched it by an inch. I mean, those turns like this, that is now I do it in every piece of mine, were non-existent. Maybe before Kumiben made a piece called Yugal. She was inspired most probably by the balletic turns. They were questioned, and now it has become part of a very harmonious part of the Kathak repertoire.
Yeah.
You know, and there's so many examples like this. So broader parameters. What do I do? And so I said, no, I have this life and I don't want to put restrictions on my creative input. And therefore, let me explain how I think of. I don't think that when I do my contemporary dance based on Kathak, I don't do fusion. I don't cut a mango branch and put it on an apple tree. At least I hope not. I don't do what is called, how do they say? It's called when you peel away, when you deconstruct.
Yeah.
Because I'm constructing every single day dancing Kathak.
Yeah.
I have learned Kathak, I have taught Kathak, I have only Kathak people in my dance school. 80% of my performative output has been Kathak. 80% of my time in the studio has been Kathak. My immersion has been Kathak. So it can't be deconstruction. I'm constructing on it every day. It can't fusion. So what I call it is absorption. If I take a seed of Kathak and I water it with Kathak sensibilities, according to my broader vision of Kathak, a Kathak tree grows out. Therefore, every individual Kathak dancer, even from the same guru, there's a different tree.
Yes.
Okay? I mean, there should be, because it's your little generative seed that you have sown, not someone else's. And that same seed, that same Kathak seed, if I sow, and I water it with contemporary sensibilities, then the tree that grows out of it is a roots of Kathak that has absorbed maybe from various sources and absorbed, not just cut and pasted. So we take a long time in finding out various possibilities of the spine, various ways of working with the floor, various ways of working with touch. If one wants, like I wanted to do something that I required another way of looking at it. That's all.
So, Didi, of course, now you are celebrated, for introducing these elements. But I'm sure when you must have begun, there must have been a lot of backlash for, doing what you did. And how did you cut across that, and how did you perceive it? I mean, if you could just.
I think it has a lot to do with the strength of my two gurus, and a lot to do with my family, because they always encouraged me that listen to criticism. Don't just shut your ears and say, oh, I'm the greatest, what I'm doing is right. There's no, sorry. I'm this and that. No. Listen to it. Listen to people's opinions. Be open, but eventually don't get bogged down by it. See the truth in it at times. And then, of course, it hurts. Of course it hurts. But then you have to separate that hurt is your ego. And of course, even now, today, one day I did something silly and really bad. And I said, 2 days, I said, and then my mother said, come on now, in this situation, are you upset because of some little mistake you made? I mean, like just shrug it off, And I think that has helped in a way to use the criticism to grow.
Yeah, so Didi, when you rejected the SNA award, was that also your way of growing and, utilizing the criticism which you had received for, and as far as I heard, not wearing a dupatta, so this is not Kathak. I mean, so
Yeah. So, yeah, that was the National Sangeet Natak Academy Award. So when somebody called me and said you got the award, I was like really excited because I just presumed it was Kathak. And then I, of course, heard it was not Kathak and it was creative and experimental dance. Now, Madhur, I really feel that my entire life has been immersed in Kathak. As I mentioned earlier in this interview, I have learned Kathak, I have taught Kathak, my dance company is Kathak, 80% of my work is in Kathak. And yet, I feel humanity is greater than Kathak. I'm sorry. And therefore, if I wanted to explore another way of looking at dance, that's my prerogative. You cannot whip me for that. You cannot criticize me for that. And most importantly, you cannot box me for that. You cannot tell the future generations that if you, in fact, have the courage to explore your own artistry, then you will be boxed. And so respectfully, I declined the award because I would not have been able to live with myself saying कि चलो award मिल गया. No. Yeah. I'm sorry. And also creative and experimental is part of every classical tradition. So what is that genre is what I'm asking. Is it contemporary dance? Then I am like at the beginning step of my exploration. How can you give me a great national award in contemporary dance with somebody like Astad Debu has got? His whole life has been involved in that. So on both the things, I thought it was to me didn't feel truthful to myself. And then to the cherry on the cake was when I got a letter from the gurus of the Kathak Kendra saying that how do you call yourself a Kathak dancer because you don't the aharya and the dupatta. And that completely, in fact, thappa marod. I was really happy that I had rejected the award. Because is that a mindset? Why do you wear a dupatta? You know, a dupatta is worn for a certain aesthetic quality or when the content of the piece that you're dancing demands it or when you're historically referencing to something demands it. And then many scholars started saying that it gives 3 dimension to Kathak. I find that an offensive and very sexist statement because men don't need it. Men are born with this 3 dimension. So women need it. And this whole thing about modesty, or false modesty. So men don't need it.
Yeah.
They have 3 dimension, women need it. Men don't need modesty, women need it. Where are we going? My first solo, I was 16, Kalke Kalakar. Kumiben had chosen my costume. I had no thought of dupatta or this or that or anything. And there was no dupatta in that. In the audience, there was, of course, Kumi men, Mohan Rao Kalyanpurkar ji, Sitara Devi ji. Okay, nobody. There was no discussion about that at all. Look at the costumes worn by various different Kathak dancers. From Roshan Kumari ji to Kumi men to Rohini Bhatte ji, to Madam Menaka.
Yeah.
And even in Maharajji's productions, I have danced a lot of productions with Maharajji where the dupatta was not used. In fact, in the Festival of India in 1985, the dupatta, we had one side here and the other side was a pleat coming down on this side. One side of the body was completely open. So, yeah, so as a respectful student of Kathak, I wrote back to the gurus of
But Didi,
anyway.
the spirit of, I mean, we can continuously see that there is this pursuit of excellence, and there's also this courage that you have of, of letting go, of treading your own path, of not getting involved in, anything which bogs you down. So you've also experimented and done some productions. Like I saw one of your productions on when the Nirbhaya thing happened, the Nirbhaya Kand, and then you had created a production. Some people were just appalled that that somebody would dance to that, and so
Well,
this is my personal question: how do you choose a theme, and what is relevant, and what can be shown through classical art?
yes. So let me put it. You're absolutely right. There are some things that don't. I mean, I said it right in the beginning when I was talking about claustrophobia. There are some things that don't work within broader classical format. We were actually, let me talk about within, and we were actually doing a piece looking at Shiva Shakti relationships. Okay, that's how that was the peg actually. We were looking at relationships, and my new work was about this relationships that we were working on when the Nirbhaya incident happened. And it was impossible not to be affected by it as an artist. Not only me, but all the dancers, because essentially we were looking at relationships. What was it that made these people so brutal? Nobody is born brutal. What was it that a 16-year-old boy at this kind of something that ravages another human being comes out? What was that? So the trajectory of the piece started changing. And eventually I removed all gender from it. So within is not, it was informed by the thing. It's not about it at all. It was informed by it. And we removed the gender, and then we said, let's look within ourselves, within the embrace of brutality and humanity, within each one of us. And what is it? What are these scratches that you see? What is it that this inner anger, this inner violence, we are not able to observe and let it dissolve? Why does it come out? Right? So within was in two parts called knotted and unwrapped. Knotted was this disturbing part where again, I think, it was contemporary dance based on Kathak. Okay? It was disturbing. It was, I wanted the audience to go out and say, oh guys, life is not so bad. And some did. I mean, oh my God, it's so disturbing. I can't see it anymore. I want to leave. I wanted to create that because there is no amount of giving away to brutality. Brutality is raw. Brutality is disturbing. There is zero shringar or anything in brutality. It's the most gut wrenching, right? But I am a very positive person. And we had many discussions because some people were of the opinion that no, it should be left at this. And I said, no, I am a positive person. I need to find that humanity within the work, like I strive to find it within myself, right? So I came across this beautiful quote by J. Krishnamurti, who my family has also been very close to. And I grew up listening to J. Krishnamurti, and as he used to be stay with my maternal grand aunt, and my grandmother was very close to him. I don't know the quote exactly now, I don't have it here anymore, but it's you have to find the right mirror to reflect who you really are. You have to find a mirror that will actually tell you who you really are. And only then is there freedom. Only then are you able to see. So the second part called Unwrapped, we start, and that's classical Kathak. There is Nomatra, Dhamar, Tintal, there is Kabir. We have used various different, and the whole structure, if you watch it, there's nothing non-classical about it. It's classical Kathak. I start with masked faces. So the dupatta is not on your head, but it's on your face. What is it showing? Yeah, all wrapped around. The drummers are with their back to the audience. We are all masked. It's trying, and what we are doing is, and the light is also boxed, not open. So what we're trying to say is that if you don't find that mirror, if you're unable to look within, so this was actually a way of looking within. The musicians turned around was that you're not able to do so. And then when you slowly find a possibility of finding yourself suddenly, then you have the possibility of seeing who you are. And then the piece, my solo is on Kabir, Kahat Kabira Suno Bhai Sadho, Isi mein Sai Hamara. You know, and I was very inspired by a Siddha sculpture, which is actually a cutout. It's a cutout of the sculpture, and it's actually for an enlightened being is actually space, you know, and I took it as a structure where if you put it against the sky, you see the sky. If you put it against a wall, you'll see nothing but a wall. And so we start with this image of a Siddha sculpture where this lighting designer made the most brilliant, she just used the backdrop of Kamani, turned that gold like the structure, and I became the silhouette, the cutout. And then the whole thing evolves, and then in the end, it is yaar ko humne ja baja dekha, kahin zahir, kahin chupa dekha. That if you have that humanity, then love and your yaar is everywhere.
Yeah.
So that's how, you know, I think pieces are made. There's a lot of thought that goes, many discussions, many processes, much editing. There's just as much material that we put on stage. There's 4 times that much material that we chuck out.
Yeah, yeah. And Didi, since you have been, we all respect you for being a thinking artist and leading the way forward. My last question for you today is, what is the way forward in these uncertain times? I believe you're doing a couple of interesting projects. And what would you like to say to all the artists?
Well, we are living in unprecedented times. The entire world is, and I have no answers. That's all. I can only say that this is my reality today. We are in our homes, we are isolated, and we have to accept this. We have adapt this. We have to keep that creative spark alive. We need to reach out. The only medium right now is through what we are doing right now. We have to find creative ways of finding expansion within this constriction. There are lots of little projects we did, and I think it's amazing how currently little journeys, small steps, little successes mean so much. When we were in the outside world, I mean, I call it another world, um, we were all so blasé about little things. And suddenly all that has come into being. For the first time in my life, I'm sitting and looking at the kites of floating in the sky with the most incredible choreography. So I think what we should do is find our creative process. We have done lots of little things, and the most exciting right now currently is I'm making films which are in fact called Within from Within. So that we talked about. I've taken the production within, and then we are looking at our within each dancer in Drishtikon of how do we respond to this within to with that within.
Yes.
So there are set of 6 small films, which are like 6 small productions. Um, and they've been sponsored by the fashion house Raw Mango. So we are very grateful to them to have been, to have helped us. And we are collaborating with Art Matters of Teamwork Productions. So we are going to put it out as a performance. I don't want, so I'm a privileged artist. I'm not struggling for my survival. I want to appeal to people all across that I'm giving you an artistic experience like I would give you if I performed in a theater in form of a small dance film. I would like you to open your pockets and donate, and that fund will go straight to Art Matters and will go to artists who are struggling to survive today. And I don't want to appeal, I want to give you an artistic experience. So for you to feel, to want to donate for those many artists who are not in a privileged position like you and me.
So thank you, Didi, so much. Today's talk was really, really quite interesting, and I personally got to learn so much and keep on learning so much from you. And it's always a pleasure having you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Didi.
Thank you so much. Thank you.